This video is sponsored by Square Enix. Find out more about Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai by following the link in the description of this video. What's up everyone? Alex here. Because of its association with Dragon Ball Z's Akira Toriyama, I've always thought that it would be cool to have an anime set in the world of Dragon Quest. So imagine my surprise when I learned that not only does Dragon Quest have a manga adaptation, but said manga was adapted into an anime twice, with the most recent one wrapping up last year. Infinity Strash Dragon Quest The Adventure of Dai is an action RPG set in that latter anime adaptation. And before you ask if you needed to have watched the anime or read the manga to get what's happening in it, rest assured. Much like every Dragon Quest game, it's really easy to pick up on the story. But before I dive deep into the game, I just want to reiterate that even though this video has been graciously sponsored by Square Enix, that I'm still able to present both good points and criticisms about the game. I don't ever agree to any sponsorship that prevents me from exercising my own voice, so you're getting my full unfiltered thoughts here. The footage you're seeing was recorded straight from my PS5, as I played through the game on that platform. Infinity Strash starts off with our hero Dai as his memory gets completely wiped out by a powerful opponent. This is the catalyst that'll have us going back in time to reconstruct Dai's memories, as we piece together important moments seminal to his growth as a powerful Dragon Knight. To retell these moments, the game displays moving stills taken directly from the aforementioned anime, which also features the anime's voice actors reprising their roles. I've always found that it's often very difficult to adapt a story from one type of media to another, as there's always going to be tough questions that need to be answered, such as which details to keep in or which ones will be left on the cutting room floor. The approach its developers went with in Infinity Strash is to keep the moments of the story that are important to Dai's growth into the Dragon Knight role, which also means that parts of the retelling might move a bit quicker when compared to other RPGs. This is immediately apparent during the first several story sequences of the game after Dai loses his memories, as it takes a good bit of backstory to get through in order to get to another playable portion. On the flip side, Infinity Strash does contain a ton of story, with plot progression comparable to the storytelling of modern Dragon Quest games. And if you really stop and think about that for a second, the fact that the Adventure of Dai's story resembles so much of modern Dragon Quest, despite being written back in the 90s, says a lot about why the second anime adaptation got greenlit to begin with. It's a rousing and fun adventure, with a great cast of characters that you'll want to cheer on and watch succeed, which maps out really well in an action RPG format. On the subject of its combat, I want to set the expectation that Infinity Strash's gameplay is nothing similar to Dragon Quest's previous action game forays in the Heroes series. This isn't the type of game that you can just mash buttons and win easily. This is a game that requires you to watch your opponents for tells and retaliate as soon as you see an opening. This is because you'll be animation locked whenever you attack your opponent, preventing you from canceling said attack into something else. This also means that you can easily overcommit to your offense by pressing the attack button too many times, leaving you open for any counterattacks your opponent might dish out. Thankfully, you have a bunch of mechanics at your disposal to even the odds. Every powerful enemy has a stagger meter that you can deplete to stun them momentarily. You also have access to a block and dodge roll function, which rewards you with resources every time you perfectly time them at the last minute. You're also able to switch characters on the fly, allowing you to experience a wide range of playstyles, so you're not just playing Dai. Additionally, you'll also have access to items that replenish prior to every single combat encounter. While it took me a while to deprogram myself from mashing buttons, I found Infinity Strash's combat to be quite rewarding. It's not an impossibly difficult game, but it is one that demands that you pay attention and respect your opponent's tells. And whenever you manage to hit that perfect block or dodge, the feeling of nailing that is so satisfying that you can't help but try to get another one each time. I was definitely surprised to find Infinity Strash's combat entertaining, even with its most base features, and one that delivers something different when compared to other action games out there, not just within the RPG genre. That said, the main story progression in Infinity Strash is pretty linear. From time to time, side quests will pop up for you to take on, but otherwise, you're mostly retracing Dai and company's steps in the anime quite closely. This typically means that combat encounters in Infinity Strash's main story are often limited to small locales or arenas. I see this as purposeful game design, which brings more attention to the mechanics of its action combat rather than the scenic beauty of its surrounding environments. For folks like myself who wish for a more familiar RPG experience, Infinity Strash has a place called the Temple of Recollection that strings different arenas and rooms together in order to mimic a traditional RPG dungeon. Every single run through the Temple of Recollection will have your characters temporarily starting out at level 1 with base stats. As you clear out and complete each room's objectives, you'll be given a choice of which power-ups you'd like to obtain for your party, which shakes up the gameplay quite a bit. And as you might expect, the further and further you descend into the dungeon, the tougher the enemies get. What's great about the Temple of Recollection is that it is the place to power up your bond memories and skills and spells, which incentivizes repeated attempts. But you can't just leave the Temple of Recollection at any time. You must reach certain checkpoints so that you can keep all of the loot and treasure that you've obtained. One particular type of treasure that's useful are the bond memories. Bond memories are animated panels from the manga that give you various stat ups and buffs. You only have a certain amount of free slots you can equip these bond memories in, with more to unlock once you hit certain levels. And as stated, you can power up these bond memories, as well as the skills and spells you've learned in the Temple of Recollection, which makes for a satisfying gameplay loop that is a worthwhile trek away from the seeming rigidity of Infinity Strash's main story. While much of the game's story is doled out via moving stills from the anime, there are really cool moments in Infinity Strash that are rendered in-engine. And whenever you get to see these moments, they are just truly spectacular. These cutscenes are a treat and bring a ton more importance to the ensuing events, while also delivering a variety and presentation that is absolutely welcome. Now, I get why Infinity Strash uses anime stills to portray certain story beats, and I really do. But how cool would it have been if the entire game was rendered in these styles of cutscenes? This is all to say that Infinity Strash Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai is a gorgeous looking game. Every single character is rendered in that signature Akira Toriyama style that easily distinguishes itself from a lot of JRPGs out there. And perhaps the most surprising to me is that despite taking a huge risk by creating a combat system that's not so easily mashable, its developers have managed to create a gameplay experience that is quickly digestible, while at the same time giving us the option to indulge in its systems as much as we can with the Temple of Recollection. Infinity Strash does a lot of smart things well, despite being tied to an existing IP, and will entertain fans of both the manga and the anime, and longtime Dragon Quest fans as well. And if you want to check out Infinity Strash Dragon Quest: The Adventure of Dai, follow the link in the description of this video.